Where does the royal family live? You might think it's here, but you'd be wrong. In fact, they live here. And their name certainly isn't Windsor. I've made a startling discovery. There's good evidence that's recently come to light that back in the Middle Ages, one of the kings of England was illegitimate. And if that's so, it means that every king and queen of our country since shouldn't by rights have sat on the throne. But if not them, then who? Well, I've traced the real royal family, the bloodline that's been robbed of its inheritance. And I've discovered the person alive today who should be Britain's reigning monarch. This is how it happened. What am I doing making a fuss about a centuries-old skeleton in the royal family's closet? Well, to me, it's all about the rules of the club. The monarchy rests entirely on blood and inheritance. There's an absolutely rigid system for passing on the throne. Prince Charles is first in line, then Prince William, then Harry, then Andrew, etc. The chain of power and wealth and privilege depends on two rules. One, you have to be of the royal bloodline, and two, you have to be born legitimate. But what happens if the system goes wrong, if the chain gets broken? 500 years ago, that's exactly what happened, and this is the man responsible. Edward IV was king, but his claim to the throne was fatally flawed. I found evidence that he was conceived not by his royal father, but by a humble archer. It was the summer of 1441. England was at war with France. Edward's mother had gone there with her husband. While he was away fighting, she was rumoured to have had a fling with an English archer based in the Rouen garrison. 9 months later, Edward was born. Within 20 years, Edward became Edward IV. But gossip about his parentage persisted in his lifetime and even after his death. There were rumours flashing round the Tudor court that Edward was illegitimate, and William Shakespeare actually articulates those rumours. He says in Richard III, if I can find it, when that my mother went with child of that insatiate Edward, noble York, my princely father, then had wars in France, and by true computation of the time, found that the issue was not his begot. That's pretty clear, isn't it? But the gossip was just that. There was no proof. Historians put it down to political mudslinging. But then an English historian called Mike Jones started rooting around in the archives at Rouen Cathedral. And he discovered a document that for the first time provided facts to substantiate the rumours that Edward was a bastard. When you came here, what was it you were researching?
I was looking into the records of the 100 Years' War.
And you found this thing?
This register.
What is it?
It's a record of the cathedral chapter for the summer of 1441.
What's so significant about the summer of 1441?
This is when Edward would have been conceived.
And what was it that you found?
That the Duke of York, his father, is not actually where he should be. He's on campaign in Pontoise. Prayers are being offered for his safety.
What does it say?
It says, a sermon is being preached for the safety of the Duke of York on campaign in Pontoise.
So they're worried that he's away at the very time when he was supposed to be impregnating his wife?
Yes.
But couldn't the child have been premature?
Very, very unlikely. A premature child would have been recorded.
No one had ever understood the significance of this information before you found it?
I couldn't quite believe it myself, that something as scandalous and sensational as this could have really happened.
But this is really definite. This is the original document.
It's the original document, and it shows that at the crucial time, from July through to August, the crucial 5 weeks, the father is not there.
Edward was born in late April 1442. Counting back 40 weeks earlier puts his conception right in the middle of the 5-week absence of his supposed father. Now, conception dates aren't an exact science, but 5 weeks is a big gap. Infant mortality was very high. Sick or premature babies with a claim to the throne were a risk, and chroniclers always recorded them. What's more, this new evidence binds together other clues about Edward's birth, which had previously been glossed over. First, the Rouen Cathedral records also tell us that Edward's christening was a hushed-up affair in a side chapel. In contrast, his younger brother had the whole of Rouen Cathedral opened up in celebration. Second, the lantern-jawed Edward looked nothing like the thin-faced man who was supposed to be his father. And thirdly, neutral sources tell us that his mother herself declared that Edward was a bastard, even making a legal deposition. She knew that the truth was vital to the integrity of the royal line. So why does it matter whether or not Edward IV was legitimate? Well, if I stick this up here, hopefully I can show you. This line at the top here is the great line of British kings through from Alfred the Great to Henry II to Edward III. But after Edward, suddenly the whole thing explodes. It goes bush, because it's the War of the Roses and all the kings start dying off like flies until in 1485, when Richard III dies, there are no claimants left except this one, Henry VII, and his claim comes through this line, which is an extremely dodgy one because it's about the fact that John of Gaunt had a mistress Catherine and they had children, and that line is specifically barred from inheriting the crown. So in order to legitimise himself, Henry VII married this woman, Elizabeth of York, and her claim is based on the fact that she is the daughter of Edward IV. But if Edward IV is illegitimate, then that invalidates the claim of Elizabeth and consequently of Henry and of Henry VIII and of Elizabeth I and of the Georges and of Victoria and everyone all the way down to the House of Windsor. Those few words in an ancient document had potentially seismic results. Edward's illegitimacy removed a vital link from the royal chain. I was about to contest British history as we know it. I wasn't naive. I knew it was impossible to be 100% certain about events that happened 500 years ago. But I wanted to make sure I had the balance of probability on my side. And where better to check 15th century facts than at the academic world's 15th century conference.
Around the time that Luther challenged his colleagues at the University of Wittenberg on the matter of indulgences, another doctor of divinity was exciting to wholly different effect.
In the much-needed break, I sounded out other opinions about Mike's theory. Do you think that there's a question mark over Edward's legitimacy?
I think there is. It was certainly raised at the time, fairly close to the time.
It's a dynasty that destroys itself. If you start killing your brother and things of this sort, there's something odd going on. It's a very unstable time, I think, under Edward IV.
Well, his research is very, very thorough and well done. On this particular topic, we're talking about an issue where everybody has said it's impossible in the past, it's nonsense, it's rubbish. And what Michael has done is he's shown it's feasible or plausible.
I also talked to Mike again, who gave me one more plank of evidence, this time from Edward himself. Edward and his followers seem to have been suspiciously eager to tell the world that he was legitimate.
His own circle, once the story gets out, go to the opposite extreme to try and dampen it down. But that's what's so fascinating. So they're bringing out these wonderful eulogies to Edward, but they keep having to emphasize what should be obvious. Conceived in wedlock, of the royal blood, But he's on the throne.
Methinks the lady doth protest too much.
Indeed.
Yeah.